podcast where truth moves faster than a Holstein calf. No waiting on some pretty page. We're charting your ground in the digital age. From genomic codes to row-wide facts, we cut through the noise, no holding back. Not your daddy's dairy news tonight. We're sparking debates with every insight. The ring's not where the real fight's at. It's in the data, in the channel chat. From pasture to processor to your morning cup, we're raising the stakes. Try and get ahead of herd. Yeah! Where the future's more than just a word. Ahead of herd. Come on! The bullvine's calling, let your voice be heard.
Welcome back to the Bullvine Podcast, where we cut through the dairy industry noise to get you the insights that actually matter for your operation.
And today we are diving deep into a feature piece that honestly is going to ruffle some feathers. We're talking about the concept of the designer in the dairy.
That sounds fancy. Almost too fancy for the milk house.
It does, doesn't it? It has that sort of, tech bro vibe to it. But stick with me. We are diving into a philosophy backed by some serious data from Teagasc, Cornell, and the AHDB.
Okay.
Basically, we are asking a pretty provocative question. Can running your farm a little bit more like Steve Jobs ran Apple actually save your sanity and, more importantly, your bank account?
Okay, as soon as you say Steve Jobs, I know half the listeners just rolled their eyes.
Oh, for sure.
They're thinking, great, what does a guy in a black turtleneck know about somatic cell counts? What does Silicon Valley know about getting a fresh heifer to let down at 4 a.m.?
And that is a totally fair reaction. I had the same one when I first looked at the stack of research. It feels like a disconnect.
A huge one.
But bear with us, because the data we are looking at today is pointing to a massive inefficiency in how we value our own time as owners. And it's not about wearing a turtleneck. It's about how you design the system you work in.
We need to set the stage here. We need to talk about the culture of the grind. You know this better than anyone. In this industry, there is a massive badge of honor associated with working long hours.
Oh, absolutely. It's the lone wolf mentality. If you aren't the first one in the parlor at 4:30 a.m. and the last one turning off the lights at 9 p.m., do you even really care about your cows? That's the mindset.
It really is.
If my neighbor sees my truck in the driveway at 7 a.m., I feel like I need to have an excuse ready. Like, oh, I was up all night with a calving, Right. Not, I decided to get a decent night's sleep. You feel like you're slacking off.
It's deep-seated. But what if that mindset, that guilt, is costing you $24,000 a year?
Now that is a number that gets my attention. We're talking about net margin here, not just gross revenue.
We are talking about pure profit left on the table. We were going to unpack a proven 988-hour gap between the most efficient herds and the least efficient ones.
988 hours.
And we're not talking about robot farms versus tie stalls here. Yeah. We're talking about management style. Shifting from the doer, the person holding the milker claw, to the designer, the person managing the system.
Look, I'm going to play the skeptic today because I know what it's like. You can't just manage a farm from an office chair. Cows get sick, waters break, scrapers get stuck, things go wrong.
Of course.
So I want to see if this is just office farming theory or if it actually holds up in the barn when, the manure hits the fan.
That is fair. But I'm going to challenge you. By the end of this hour, I want to see if we can convince you and the listener that buying a robot might just be buying a guilt machine if you don't fix your head game first.
All right, shots fired early. I like it. Let's get into it.
Let's start with segment 1, the core problem. The source material identifies this as the lone wolf identity crisis.
The lone wolf. This is the idea that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. It's probably carved into the wall of every farm shop in the country.
Exactly. And the article opens with this parallel to the tech world that we touched on. We had this myth of Steve Jobs, right? The lone genius in the garage, soldering circuits, building the Macintosh with his bare hands.
That's the story we all know. One guy against the world. It's a great story.
It is a great story, but the source points out it is completely false. Steve Jobs never soldered a circuit board. He didn't write the code. He didn't build the casing.
Okay, but he was the boss. He was in charge.
He was the designer. He was the conductor. He built the team. He set the vision. He was the one saying no to things that weren't perfect. But he wasn't the one turning the screwdriver.
I see where you're going with this.
And the article argues that too many dairy farmers are trying to be the technician in the garage doing every single task, instead of being the Jobs figure who designs the entire system.
I get the analogy, but let's be real. Steve Jobs didn't have to worry about a localized mastitis outbreak on a Sunday morning.
Right.
It's a little different when you're dealing with livestock that are living, breathing, and seemingly always trying to find new ways to die.
It is different, but is the psychology. The emotional hurdle is the same. The source talks about this deep-seated fear that sleeping past 6 a.m. feels like a failure, like you're betraying your father's work ethic.
That hits home. I mean, my dad never took a day off. Never. If I take a weekend, there is a voice in my head saying the farm is going to fall apart. It's a real physical feeling of anxiety.
But here's the operational impact of that guilt.
Yeah.
When the owner is stuck in the pit, literally holding the unit, what isn't happening?
Well, you're not looking at records. You're not planning forage needs for next year. You're definitely not having a calm team meeting to go over protocols. You're just surviving the shift. Your head is down.
Exactly. The high-value task breeding strategy, team development, ration management, those get poofed to the side because you're too busy working. There was some fascinating data from Teagasc focus groups mentioned here.
Teagasc is the Irish authority, right?
Yeah.
They do good work on labor efficiency because they're so pasture-based and seasonal.
Right. And in these focus groups, they found that farmers felt that anything under 55 hours a week was acceptable. That was sort of the baseline for a good work-life balance in their eyes.
55 hours, that sounds like a vacation to a lot of guys I know. I mean, they'd call that part-time.
Right. But here's the thing. The bottom quartile farms, the ones struggling the most financially, were blowing past that. They were working 15 to 20 hours more than that threshold. They were doing 70, 75-hour weeks.
And they were just accepting it.
They were tolerating the grind, thinking it was necessary to survive. They wore it as a badge of honor. I put in 75 hours last week.
So the guys working the hardest were making the least progress.
That is exactly where we are heading. This brings us to segment 2, the industry reality check. We need to deep dive into this 988-hour gap.
Okay, walk me through these numbers. This is from that Teagasc Moorepark study you mentioned.
Yes, so they looked at labor efficiency on pasture-based dairy farms. They split them into the top 25% and the bottom 25% based on labor efficiency. Now, guess the difference in herd size.
Okay, usually the efficient ones are the massive herds, right? Economies of scale. You'd expect the top group to have 500 cows and the bottom group to have 50.
That's what you'd think. That's the conventional wisdom. But in this study, the herd sizes were almost identical. The top group averaged 112 cows. The bottom group averaged 113 cows.
You're kidding me. So one extra cow isn't causing all the trouble. We're comparing apples to apples here.
Exactly. But the hours, the top group worked about 51 hours a week on average.
Okay. Like we said, still a serious work week, but you can have a life. You can see your family.
For sure. But the bottom group, 70 hours a week.
Whoa. That's a 19-hour difference. Every single week.
19 hours a week. Let's do the math on that. Over a year, 52 weeks times 19 hours totals 988 hours.
Almost 1,000 hours.
It's essentially an extra half-time job that the bottom group is doing for the same number of cows.
Think about that. That's almost 25 standard 40-hour work weeks. That is half a year of normal work you're putting in for free.
And for what? Are they getting more milk? Are they more profitable?
I assume not if they are the bottom quartile for efficiency.
They aren't. They are generally less profitable. They're working more and earning less. It's a brutal cycle.
You know, they mentioned this is Irish data, so seasonal calving, grass-based. Does this actually translate to a year-round TMR barn in Wisconsin or New York?
Right.
Because walking a pasture to get cows is different than scraping stalls.
It's a fair question, and the source argues yes, because the core truth is universal. Profitable farms work different hours, not just more hours. It's about what you do with the time.
So it's about system design, not the type of system.
Exactly. And to back that up, let's look at the Cornell Dairy Farm Business Summary from 2024. They looked at 129 New York farms.
Okay, New York, that's more comparable to the high input systems a lot of our listeners run. Confinement, TMR, the whole deal.
Right. And what they found was that the top earning herds shipped 1.7 million pounds of milk per worker.
That's a solid metric, milk per FTE, full-time equivalent. It's a great way to measure labor productivity.
And the bottom earning herds. Only 1.2 million pounds of milk per worker.
That's a huge spread in efficiency. That is 500,000 pounds of milk per person that you are missing out on every single year for every employee.
Huge. But here's the kicker, and this is the part that blew my mind. The cost of hired labor per worker was roughly the same across the board, between $57,000 and $61,000.
Wait, explain that. So the top farms weren't just finding cheaper labor? They weren't hiring high school kids for minimum wage?
No. They were paying the same market rate for people, maybe even slightly more, but they designed systems that allowed those people to be vastly more productive. They got more milk per human hour.
So they're not saving money on the wage, they're making more money on the output.
That is the definition of system design. It's the difference between running around, putting out fires, and having a fire prevention plan.
Yeah, if you're shipping 1.2 million pounds per worker, you're probably chasing cows, fixing gates that should have been replaced 5 years ago, and dealing with mastitis cases that shouldn't have happened in the first place.
You're dealing with friction. The source material emphasizes that efficiency isn't about running faster. It's about removing friction from the system.
Friction, I like that word. Friction is the gate that doesn't latch. Friction is the hose that is always tangled. Friction is having to walk 50 extra steps to get the dip because it's not where it should be.
Friction is the SOP that no one follows because it's too complicated. Or, worse, it only exists in your head. And that friction costs real money.
Which is a perfect segue.
It is. Which leads us to segment 3, follow the money. Because I know some listeners are thinking, okay, so I work hard, it's my time, it's free, who cares?
Yeah, the sweat equity argument. If I do it, I don't have to pay someone. I hear that in every coffee shop from here to California. It's baked into our DNA.
Right. But it's a flawed argument. Let's look at Dr. John Fetrow's formula from the University of Minnesota. He breaks down the cost of being too busy to manage reproduction.
I love Fetrow's stuff. He always puts a dollar sign on biology, makes it tangible.
He does. So he calculates the value of a 1-point improvement in pregnancy rate, or PR. He pegs it between $15 and $35 per cow per year.
Okay, that depends on milk price and replacement costs. But let's say $20 to be conservative. That's a pretty safe number.
Sure, $20. Now take a scenario. You have a 200-cow herd. You're running a 19% PR because you're busy milking and you miss a few heats, or your protocols are a bit sloppy because you're tired. Your neighbor, same size herd, runs a 25% PR.
That's a 6-point gap. And that's not a crazy gap. A 19 is average, a 25 is good, but it's achievable. It's not like comparing to a 40 PR herd.
Totally achievable.
Yeah.
So the calculation is the gap. That's 6 points times the value, we'll use $20, times the herd size, 200 cows.
Let me do the mental math here. 6 times 20 is 120. Times 200, that's $24,000.
$24,000 a year. That is pure net margin. That's not gross revenue. That is money that falls to the bottom line because you aren't feeding open cows and you aren't buying as many replacements.
It's money you just don't get. It vanishes. And if you use the high end of his estimate, $35 a point, which might be realistic with high replacement costs.
It jumps to over $42,000.
For the same cows, just managed differently, for 6 percentage points.
See, this is the opportunity cost we always talk about but never calculate. We see the check we write to the relief milker, let's say $200 for the shift, and we flinch. We feel that pain. But we don't see the $24,000 check we didn't get because our PR is stuck at 19.
That is the invisible loss. It's so much easier to track expenses than it is to track lost income.
And there is real-world evidence for this. It's not just a formula on a spreadsheet. The UW-Madison Repro Money Program worked with 40 Wisconsin dairies. They didn't tell them to buy robots. They didn't tell them to build new barns.
What did they do?
They just told them to form teams owner, vet, nutritionist, and meet regularly.
Just meetings. That's the office work guys hate. I don't make money sitting in a chair. That's what you hear.
Just meetings and protocols. And guess what? They improved their PR by 2 points on average, just from that. The economic gain was about $31 per cow per year.
So on a 300-cow herd, you're looking at over $9,000 purely from sitting down and talking to your team.
Yes, because when you sit down, you stop doing the $18 an hour work and start doing the $100 an hour work.
That's the comparison that hurts. I was looking at the USDA labor stats for January 2025. Livestock workers are averaging about $18.15 an hour.
Right.
So if I'm the owner and I'm insisting on doing the milking myself because nobody does it like me, I am effectively valuing my time at $18.15 an hour.
While you are neglecting the work that is worth $100 or $200 an hour, negotiating feed contracts, analyzing that repro data, preventing the next outbreak, You are stepping over dollars to pick up dimes.
It's the cost of loss decisions. We track the cost of labor on the P&L. We don't have a line item for money lost because I was too tired to notice the breeding list was outdated.
That is the hidden killer. And it's not just theoretical. I want to talk about some real farmers who made this shift.
Yeah.
Segment 4, case studies. Let's make this real.
Okay, let's talk about Jim Kirk. And before anyone asks, no, not the Star Trek guy.
No, Jim Kirk from Heaton Barton Farm in the UK. He's running 606 Holsteins, big rotary parlors, 60 points.
A 60-point rotary for 600 cows. That's some serious iron. That's 1 point for every 10 cows. He's not messing around.
He is not. And the efficiency is incredible. 2 people run the whole milking in under 2 hours.
That's fast. That's moving cows. But it also means you have a big chunk of your day back.
And that's the point. The key isn't just the rotary. It's what Kirk did with his role. He told the source he replaced an old herringbone parlor specifically because it was consuming his entire day. He realized he was a slave to the pit.
So he spent the capital to free up his time. That's a huge mental shift. You're not buying a machine to milk cows. You're buying a machine to buy back your own time.
Yes. But he didn't just use that time to watch TV. He shifted into that designer mode.
Yeah.
He holds daily whiteboard meetings with his herdsman, Harrison. They write down the jobs, tick them off. It's simple. It's visual.
I love the whiteboard idea. It's so simple. It's analog. You don't need fancy software. But it forces communication and accountability.
And look at the results. His pregnancy rate is sitting at 25%, which puts him in the top 5% of British herds. That's a direct result of him having the mental space to focus on breeding and ration management instead of just prepping udders.
And he trusts his team. The source mentions he sent his herdsman, Harrison, to the U.S. to visit farms.
Exactly. He sent him with worldwide sires. Think about that. Most farmers are terrified to train their staff that well because they might leave. What if I invest all this in him and he leaves?
And the classic counterargument is, what if you don't train him and he stays?
Exactly. Kirk is training him so he can take ownership. That is a Steve Jobs move. Pick the best people, give them the vision and the tools, and let them execute.
It's the difference between having a hired hand and having a herdsman. A hired hand does what you say. A herdsman knows why we're doing it and can make decisions when you're not there.
Spot on. Now let's bring it back to the States. Wayside Dairy in Wisconsin.
Yeah, the Natsky family. Big operation, 2,000 cows. This is a great example because it shows the progression.
It really is. For years, their PR was hovering around 18%. Not terrible for a herd that size a few years ago, but not great. Just kind of average.
Stuck in a rut.
Right. So phase 1 of their turnaround wasn't technology. It was management. They changed their vet. They changed their nutritionist. They implemented new protocols like a double Luteolise shot.
Okay, so they tightened the screws on the basics. No shiny new toys yet, just people and process.
And that alone jumped them to a 33% PR.
Wait, just from management changes? From 18 to 33? That's a 15-point jump.
Just from people and protocols, that is a massive jump. It's life-changing for a dairy's cash flow.
It's unbelievable. But then came phase 2. They added cow manager ear sensors.
The activity monitors.
Right. And with the sensors, they jumped again up to 38% PR.
38% is elite. That is stratospheric. That's top 1% stuff.
But here's the lesson, and I want everyone to hear this. Jeremy Natsky, the owner, didn't use the tech to fix a broken system. He used the tech to enhance a system that was already working.
That's a crucial distinction. Say that again.
He used technology to enhance a working system, not to fix a broken one. I see so many guys buying sensors or robots hoping it will fix their management problems. If I just buy these collars, my cows will get pregnant.
No. If you have bad protocols and poor compliance, the collars just tell you that you have bad protocols faster. They just give you more data on your failures.
Exactly. Natsky said the sensors reduced his synchronization costs because they were catching natural heats. But he only could take advantage of that because he had the team and the trust and the protocols in place to act on the data.
It goes back to the designer idea.
Yeah.
He designed a system where the sensors had a specific value-added role, not a rescue mission.
Which leads us perfectly into segment 5, the future and the tech trap.
The tech trap. I feel like we're seeing this a lot with the robotic milking boom. Everyone wants a robot. It's the shiny new thing.
It is.
And I'm going to be controversial here. My hot take. If you buy a robot but you insist on being the robot, checking every alarm personally, waking up 3 times a night because you don't trust the machine, you didn't buy a labor-saving device. You bought a guilt machine.
A guilt machine. That hits hard. I know guys with robots who are more tired than when they milked in a parlor because the phone never stops dinging. They're tethered to it 24/7.
Exactly. You traded the physical work in the pit for the mental stress of being constantly on call. The source makes a fascinating cost comparison here. Sensors, like the Cow Manager ones, cost about $25 per cow per year.
Okay, manageable.
A robot, you're talking $400,000 plus per unit. And that's before installation and maintenance.
That is a massive capital difference. You can buy a lot of sensors for the price of one box.
It is. And the decision matrix should be, what is your bottleneck? If your bottleneck is information like, I don't know which cow is in heat, then Sensors Plus Management is the ROI winner. You don't need a $400,000 robot to find a heat.
But if the bottleneck is that you literally cannot find a human being to show up and attach the unit,
then robots might be the answer. But, and this is the big, but only if the owner lets go of the control.
Right. If you buy the robot, you have to let the robot be the milker. You become the manager of the robot. Your job changes.
The job's approach to tech is about user experience, simplicity. The source talks about setting thresholds for intervention rather than checking every cow.
Explain that. What does that look like in practice?
So instead of looking at every single cow's data every morning and getting overwhelmed, you set a rule in the software. I only want to see cows where milk dropped by more than 15%. Or only show me cows with a high conductivity and a rumination alert.
You manage by exception. You let the computer sift through the noise and just show you the problems.
Yes. You shift from hours in the parlor to decisions per week as your metric of success. If you're looking at healthy cows on a computer screen, you are wasting time. The system should hide the healthy cows and only show you the sick ones.
That requires trusting the system, which brings us right back to the psychological hurdle we started with. What if the computer misses one? That's the fear.
It might. But are you telling me you never missed one when you were half asleep in the pit at 5 a.m. on a Tuesday? The goal isn't perfection, it's a better system.
Touché. Good point. That brings us to segment 6, contrarian takes. Because the source argues something that sounds crazy. The lazy farmer might be the most profitable one.
Lazy is a dirty word in this industry. If you call a farmer lazy, them's fighting words. You better be ready to back that up.
I know, but let's reframe lazy. Let's think of it as strategic inactivity. The source suggests that the most profitable thing an owner can do is say no.
The power of no, like Jobs killing the floppy drive on the Mac.
Exactly. Everyone screamed when he did that. We need the floppy drive. He said, no, it's old tech, it's clutter, we're moving on.
So on a farm, what does saying no look like? It means dropping unprofitable side projects. It means killing traditions that don't pay. It means saying no to that extra 100 acres of corn you don't have the equipment for. And it means stepping away from a milking shift, even if you feel guilty.
It's the ability to say, we are not going to raise our own bull calves anymore because it distracts us from the heifers. Or we aren't going to make dry hay just because we always have. We're going to buy it in because our time is better spent elsewhere.
Yes. But here is the pushback I hear, and I want you to voice it. If I step back, things fall apart.
That's the fear. What if I leave for 3 days to go to a wedding and the somatic cell count spikes? What if the feeder loads the wrong mix and all the fresh cows go down? It's a legitimate terror for a lot of owners.
And here is the brutal rebuttal from the source. If the SCC spikes the moment you leave the driveway, you don't have a system, you have a job.
Ouch. Stings. But it's true.
The goal is to build a lab, your farm, that works when you walk out the door. If it requires your physical presence to function, you haven't designed anything. You're just the glue holding it all together.
And that glue is expensive. And frankly, it's fragile. If you break a leg, the whole farm breaks. That's not a business. That's a high-risk hobby that happens to own a lot of assets.
Precisely. And the banks are starting to notice this. We're looking at a financial reckoning. The outlook for 2026-2027 suggests margins are going to compress.
They usually do. It's a cyclical business.
Banks are looking hard at cost of production. The Cornell data showed that bottom quartile farms spend about $22.32 per hundredweight in operating costs.
Yeah.
The top quartile, $15.79.
That is a $6.53 gap per hundredweight. That is enormous. That is the difference between making money at $18 milk and losing your shirt.
And the bank doesn't care how hard you worked for that $6.53 gap. They don't give you a discount on interest rates because you have calluses on your hands. They care about the number.
If you are spending $22 to make milk because you're working hard but managing poorly, you are going to get eaten alive by the guy spending $15 because he's in the office negotiating feed prices.
Exactly. The lazy farmer who sits in the office and locks in a low corn price is making more money in 1 hour than the hardworking farmer makes in a month of milking.
That's a pill that's hard to swallow, but the math is the math.
So we've laid out the problem, we've shown the data, we've scared everyone with the financial reality. Now we need to fix it.
Right. We can't just leave people hanging. Hey, you're inefficient and your business is fragile. Good luck. We need a plan.
All right, let's break this down. A farmer just finished milking. They're driving to the feed store listening to us. They're tired, they are skeptical, but they are curious. What is the 3-step plan to stop being the bottleneck?
Okay, let's look at the actionable insights from the source. We've got an immediate step, a medium-term step, and a long-term goal.
Step 1, immediate action, this week.
The 1-page SOP, Standard Operating Procedure.
Explain it.
The challenge is to pick one milking shift. Just one. Let's say Tuesday morning. You need to write down exactly how that shift should run from start to finish on a single sheet of paper.
Why just 1 page? Why the constraint?
Because if it doesn't fit on 1 page, the source says it's not a standard, it's a wish. It's too complicated. You need to simplify it until it fits on a page that you can laminate and stick on the wall. Cow flow, prep routine, dip, wash, post-dip, bullet points. Simple.
I love that. It's not a standard, it's a wish. If you can't explain it simply, you haven't designed it well enough. It means you're relying on tribal knowledge.
Exactly. Steve Jobs wanted the Mac to be intuitive. Your parlor needs to be intuitive for a new hire.
Okay, step 2, medium-term strategy, the 3 to 6 month timeline.
The 30-day test.
How does this work?
You take that 1-page SOP you wrote, you train one person, maybe a key employee, maybe a family member, to run that Tuesday morning shift exactly according to the paper. You watch them, you coach them, and then, this is the hard part, you step away from that shift entirely for 30 days.
Like, don't even go in the barn. That's going to cause some anxiety.
Don't go in the barn during milking. Don't hover. Don't text them every 5 minutes asking how it's going. You track 3 numbers: milk shipped, bulk tank, SCC, and mastitis cases.
The key performance indicators, the big 3.
Right. If those numbers hold steady for 30 days without you being there, congratulations. That shift is now permanently owner optional. You just bought yourself 4 hours a week, every week.
And if they slip, if the SCC bumps up a bit.
If they slip, you don't just jump back in the pit and scream, move over! You fix the training, you fix SOP. Maybe a step wasn't clear. You treat it like a design flaw, not a personnel failure.
That is the discipline. It's so easy to just take the tool back. Fine, I'll do it myself. But that puts you right back in the trap. It solves the immediate problem, but kills the long-term solution.
Right. You have to debug the system, not just replace the worker with yourself.
Okay, step 3, long-term positioning, 1 to 2 years out.
The financial reallocation. This is the big picture. You need to actually map your time usage. For a week, write down what you do. Be honest.
The source suggests a target. Shift 15 hours a week.
Take 15 hours that you used to spend doing manual labor scraping, milking, feeding, and move them to designer work, repro data analysis, lender negotiations, team building meetings, reading articles from the Bullvine.
I like that plug. And the ultimate goal is to be able to tell your lender exactly what you earn per hour of owner work versus milker work.
Imagine sitting across from your banker and saying, when I'm in the pit milking, I save the farm $18 an hour in wages. When I spend an hour analyzing my repro data and adjusting protocols, I make the farm $150 an hour in improved efficiency. That is why I hired a relief milker.
That is a conversation that gets you alone. That is a conversation that shows you are running a business, not just a lifestyle.
It changes the dynamic completely. You're no longer just a farmer, you're a CEO.
So, to recap, write the SOP this week. Do the 30-day test this quarter to prove the system works. Then, over the next year, aggressively reallocate your time to where the real money is.
It sounds simple when we lay it out like this, but I know it's the hardest thing a farmer will ever do. It's fighting decades of conditioning. It's fighting the ghost of your grandfather telling you to work harder, not smarter.
It is. But, as the source says, 10 years from now, the herd still standing will be owned by the people who stopped pretending they were the machine and started acting like the designer.
More Steve Jobs, less hired milker-in-chief.
Exactly.
You know, one thing we didn't touch on, but the source hints at, is the legacy aspect of this whole thing. The article mentions ensuring the farm is a life the next generation wants, not just a job they are obligated to take over.
That is profound.
If your kids see you grinding 80 hours a week, looking miserable, exhausted, never making it to their ball games because you have to milk, why on earth would they want to take that over?
They won't. They'll go work for a tech company. They'll go find a job that gives them weekends off and a 401k.
But if they see you managing a system, building a team, having a life outside the farm, suddenly taking over the farm looks like a pretty good career. It looks like an opportunity, not a prison sentence.
So you aren't just designing the dairy for your bank account today. You're designing it for your succession plan tomorrow.
Exactly. You're designing a business that is actually transferable. You can't transfer your own work ethic to your kid. You can't pass down your ability to work 80 hours a week, but you can transfer a system.
That is the aha moment for me right there. You can't transfer hustle. You could only transfer systems.
Put that on a bumper sticker.
I think we will. So looking at all of this, the 988 hours, the $24,000, the gilts, where do you land? Is the industry ready for this shift?
I think the industry doesn't have a choice. Margins are getting tighter. Labor is getting harder to find and more expensive. The lone wolf model is going extinct. It worked in 1990. It doesn't work in 2026.
I agree. The romantic image of the farmer doing it all is. It's a nice story. It makes for a good country song. Yeah. But it's a business liability.
It's a massive liability, and the data proves it, from Ireland to New York.
Well, I think that gives our listeners plenty to chew on while they, well, hopefully while they aren't milking, but maybe while they're checking their repro chart.
Or while they're writing that one-page SOP.
There you go. All right, let's wrap this up. We've covered the myth of the lone wolf, the 988-hour efficiency gap, the real cost of a low pregnancy rate, the lessons from Jim Kirk and Wayside Dairy, and the trap of the gilt machine robot.
A full menu today. A lot to think about.
A full deep dive.
This has been another Bullvine podcast from the Bullvine Podcast. If you are ready to stop soldering circuits or milking cows when you should be managing and start designing your dairy, head to www.thebullvine.com for more straight-talking industry analysis.
Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. We're out with new episodes every day. And remember, the most profitable tool on the farm might just be the one between your ears. Use it. Thanks for listening.